The unknown hunter moved silently through the sea of monsters, steadily making his way toward the building where Suho was hiding. In his hand, he dragged a massive sword, its weight evident as it scraped along the ground, leaving deep grooves behind. His movements, despite the heavy weapon, were unerringly smooth and agile. As he neared the building, the hunter launched himself into the air with incredible speed and precision, his focus locked on his target. Inside, Suho peered out of a window, trying to make sense of the chaos unfolding outside. Suddenly, without warning, a fierce attack was launched in his direction. Suho barely registered the swift motion of the fog burn, a fearsome, awakened monster, drawing its sword and moving toward him with deadly intent. In a brief moment of shock, Suho froze, unsure of how to react. His mind raced as he realized he had to act quickly or face a lethal blow. This creature wasn't just any monster, it was a C-rank mist burn, far stronger than Suho's current level, making the battle seem nearly impossible. The fog burn's attack hit with devastating force, sending chunks of debris and rocks flying in all directions. The impact left a cloud of dust swirling around Suho, obscuring his vision and throwing everything into disarray. The city was in turmoil, and he could hear an urgent announcement echoing from every corner of the streets. The warning was clear: a D-rank dungeon break has occurred near the Korean University district, and residents were ordered to evacuate immediately. High above, soldiers stationed on the rooftops watched the scene below, helplessly standing by as chaos consumed the city. They were ordered not to intervene, frustrating many of them as they saw innocent people falling victim to the madness. The commander, impatient and concerned, asked when the hunters from the association would arrive to help. His subordinate grimly answered that they were still waiting for word. In the midst of this escalating crisis, Suho realized that he was alone in this fight. The fog burn wasn't going to let up, and the authorities weren't coming to save him anytime soon. It was up to him to face this powerful enemy and survive the storm on his own. The commander received an unsettling update: they needed time to assign B-rank hunters to the situation. However, one of the soldiers was taken aback by this. In his mind, a D-rank should have sufficed. He voiced his surprise, but the commander explained that the Hunter Association feared the local hunters might have encountered far greater threats than expected. Scanning the list of infected hunters on his tablet, the soldier's eyes widened when he recognized a familiar face. It shocked him that even a C-rank hunter, with their advanced training and formidable defenses, could fall victim to the infection. Meanwhile, Suho faced a much more immediate threat: a dangerous mist burn had leapt onto his floor. Its eyes burned with malevolence as it gripped a massive sword, ready to strike at any moment. Suho could hardly believe this enemy had ascended from the lower levels to confront him. What made this encounter even more terrifying was the realization that this was no ordinary monster, it was a C-rank, corrupted by the fog. The fact that it wielded a weapon, unlike most other creatures, marked it as something far more dangerous and intelligent. Despite the fear clawing at him, Suho felt a surge of confidence. He had recently leveled up and felt a new sense of strength coursing through him. The mist burn charged forward, swinging its sword in a blur of deadly precision, but Suho narrowly dodged the blow, his pulse racing from the close call. His heart pounded, not from fear, but from a strange exhilaration. Quickly regaining his composure, Suho braced himself, preparing for the next assault. Yet, to his surprise, the mist burn didn't immediately follow up with another attack. The sudden pause in action heightened Suho's tension. He stood on edge, waiting anxiously for the creature's next move, knowing that even a moment of distraction could be fatal. The mist burn's silence was unnerving. Its unpredictability only fueled Suho's unease. This wasn't just a monster, it was a cold, calculating psychopath whose erratic nature made it even more dangerous. Suho knew he had to stay sharp, for this opponent's next move could determine whether he lived or died. The monster raised its sword again, ready to strike Suho, who stood cornered against the wall. Its overwhelming strength and ruthless intent were clear: this creature would annihilate anything in its path. As the monster lunged forward, Suho acted fast, hurling a fire extinguisher at it. Without hesitation, the monster sliced the extinguisher in half, releasing a dense cloud of mist that quickly enveloped the entire room. Visibility dropped to almost nothing, and Suho found himself surrounded by a thick haze. With tension rising, Suho knew the oppressive fog could be his one chance to escape. The monster was far too powerful to face head-on, and continuing the fight in this state would be suicide. The smart move was to retreat and buy time until reinforcements arrived. Suho realized this monster was on a completely different level, a true menace even for someone who had recently awakened. His best hope was to survive until the hunters showed up. Making his decision, Suho bolted for the door. But before he could get far, he sensed the presence of the creature behind him, tracking his every move. The monster's eyes gleamed with a sinister glow, its lips curling into a cruel smile. There was no mistaking the hatred and malicious joy in its expression, it was enjoying the hunt. Suho's mind raced as he dashed through the building. He knew the danger was far from over, and every step he took needed to be precise. As he passed a window, he noticed the monster halt suddenly, its gaze fixed on something outside. Peering through the window, Suho saw what had drawn the creature's attention: 3 young girls huddled together on the rooftop. They were terrified, completely unaware of the danger lurking just below them. Realizing the opportunity, the monster shifted its focus, leaping out of the window and setting its sights on the defenseless girls. They had no chance to fight back or flee, the monster's fatal blow was imminent. Suho, now free of its pursuit, paused as he processed what was happening. The monster had abandoned its hunt for him and was about to attack innocent bystanders. He watched in horror as the creature closed in on its new targets. This was no longer just about survival, he now had to make a choice. Would he flee while he had the chance, or would he intervene and risk his life to save them? The monster swung its sword at the girls, but they managed to dodge, their terrified screams echoing through the city. Hearing their cries, Suho's anger surged. He knew he couldn't just run anymore, he had to confront this powerful foe. Without a second thought, he sprinted and leaped from the window, pursuing the monster that was chasing the fleeing girls. Waiting for the hunters was no longer an option. If anyone was going to save them, it would have to be him. The monster, oblivious to Suho's pursuit, was caught off guard when Suho attacked from behind. The sudden strike only momentarily fazed the beast, who quickly spun around, eyes blazing with fury. Suho, bracing himself for a counterattack, realized just how outmatched he was. The monster barely seemed to register his blows, and with a swift swing of its sword, it launched a devastating attack. Suho narrowly dodged, the blade passing just inches from his body. Breathing heavily, Suho took a step back to evaluate the situation. He was keenly aware that a single hit from this monster would be fatal. Glancing around, he noticed the destruction the creature had already caused. Several girls on the rooftop had already fallen to its rampage. Anger flared again in Suho's chest, and he resolved not to let the monster take any more lives. Determined, he launched a relentless barrage of punches, aiming to slow the beast down. Blow after blow, Suho hit it with all his strength, his fist slamming into the creature's body. But no matter how hard he struck, the monster remained standing, unfazed by the onslaught. Suho's attacks began to weaken as fatigue set in, and the realization dawned on him: this monster was far tougher than he had anticipated. Just as Suho's strength was waning, the monster saw its opportunity. With frightening speed, it swung its sword and landed a brutal hit on Suho, cutting deep into his flesh. Staggering from the wound, Suho realized just how dangerous his situation had become. Suho writhed in agony from the deep wound as the monster closed in, determined to finish him off. With one powerful strike, it sent Suho crashing into the wall, his body collapsing to the ground. Struggling to move, he could barely register the pain. His health was critically low, and he felt the cold grip of death creeping closer. For a brief moment, Suho believed it was the end. He had lost. But strangely, he hadn't perished instantly. The system hadn't let him die, at least not yet. As the monster approached, it began to laugh, a dark and malicious sound that filled the air. It relished its victory, confident that Suho's defeat was certain. This sense of superiority only made it more dangerous, its malevolence fueling its power. Suddenly, a strange crack appeared. He raised his trembling hands. Suho was barely holding in. The crack intensified, it was like dimension itself was shattering. But there was no time to fully comprehend what was happening. The monster was already looming over him, ready to strike. The system's notifications warned that Suho's fatigue was at critical levels. His vision blurred, and his consciousness began to fade. He was too weak to defend himself, too exhausted to continue fighting. Just as the monster raised its weapon for the final blow, the sky above them started to crack. The sound echoed like a thunderclap, and before either of them could react, the entire structure began to collapse. Suho's eyes widened as the sky crumbled, and chaos erupted around them. The roof suddenly gave way as an unknown creature burst through, shattering the structure. Suho could barely comprehend what was happening. He had no idea what this new monster was, but one thing was clear: it had unintentionally saved him by interrupting the deadly battle. Both Suho and the monster plummeted down from the rooftop, unable to stop their descent. Suho's body, weakened and exhausted, had no strength left to brace for the impact. He hit the ground hard, the force of his fall sending shockwaves through the earth. The ground beneath him cracked, chunks of debris flying in all directions. His vision was blurred, and his strength was draining fast. Blood seeped from his wounds as he lay motionless, barely conscious. In those fleeting moments, thoughts raced through his mind, and oddly enough, he recalled an ant, a figure he often drew. It was a strange memory to surface at the brink of death, but it brought a sense of calm. As darkness began to consume him, Suho heard a voice, one that apologized for arriving too late. A large ant-like figure stood over him, confirming it was the one who had saved him. Suho, still disoriented, realized this creature had come just in time to prevent his demise. The ant-like being turned its gaze to the monster that had almost killed Suho, seething with rage. It vowed to make the creature pay for what it had done, and without hesitation, it launched a swift, deadly attack. The once menacing monster stood no chance as it was obliterated, reduced to nothing but shattered remnants in a matter of seconds. Meanwhile, other creatures roamed the Institute grounds, hunting for more victims to infect with their cursed blue flames. One of them locked onto a man standing nearby, completely unaware of the danger creeping toward him. The man, deep in thought, was gripping a mop, entirely oblivious to the approaching terror. When he finally noticed the creature, terror froze him in place. His face drained of color, paralyzed by the fear of the monstrous thing now advancing on him. Panic gripped the man as he realized the danger. His mind raced, desperate to figure out how to save himself, but fear had frozen his body. In a frantic burst of energy, he threw his mop aside and started yelling for help, clutching his head in terror. With his head lowered, he didn't even notice the monster about to attack him had already been obliterated. In the blink of an eye, all the monsters in the area were wiped out, their destruction resonating across the city. A powerful echo followed, rippling through the air as Beru unleashed an overwhelming surge of magical energy. Soldiers stationed nearby felt a strange, potent force but couldn't grasp what had just occurred. Their confusion was palpable. Meanwhile, Beru swiftly returned to his master, Suho. With a fond smile, he remarked how long it had been since they last met, expressing joy at seeing his young monarch again. Memories flooded back as Beru recalled Suho as a small child, sitting in his room, sketching shadow warriors. In one of those moments, Suho had looked up, astonished, to see the real Beru holding his drawing. The sight had left Beru deeply moved, realizing that his young master had imagined and drawn him long before their fateful encounter. The moment was so touching that Beru had to hold back tears, overwhelmed by the beauty of that connection. Back in the present, Suho began to regain consciousness. His eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, he struggled to make sense of his surroundings. Wrapped in a blanket and lying in a bed, he was disoriented. The first word he uttered was "Aunt?" But the doctor standing nearby was puzzled, unsure of what Suho meant. Shortly after, Suho received a call from his uncle. He checked Suho's condition, asking how badly he had been hurt and mentioning that the world had grown far too dangerous. He even suggested hiring a few bodyguards for Suho's safety. But Suho, still slightly dazed, assured him that he was fine. Turning his attention to the TV, he saw a news broadcast covering the recent incident at the University of Arts. The attack, which had left numerous people injured, was now the subject of intense discussion and government scrutiny. The Mist Burns incident shook the entire city when a mysterious creature appeared, charging at hunters and transforming them into monsters. Despite the chaos unfolding in the heart of the city, the Hunter Association struggled to respond quickly. By the time the hunters arrived on the scene, the city lay in ruins, engulfed in destruction. Yet, what baffled everyone was not the devastation, but the strange fact that all the monsters had already been eliminated. The burning question remained, who or what had wiped them out? Rumors began to circulate among shocked witnesses. Some claimed to have seen the transformed hunters, the ones who had become monsters, suddenly reappearing, almost out of thin air. Suho sat on the hospital bed, barely able to believe what he was seeing. It felt too surreal, as though he was trapped in a dream. Yet, he soon realized that this was all too real. His thoughts drifted to the phenomenon of awakening and how it made individuals stronger as their levels increased. Suho was only level 5, and he vaguely recalled earning a small rank boost during a desperate fight with a hunter who had been infected by the Mist Burns. But he couldn't explain how he had managed to survive that encounter. Suddenly, a voice echoed in his mind, explaining that it was Beru who had saved him by eliminating the parasites responsible for the transformation. Startled, Suho glanced at the ground and saw a massive shadow with large, luminous eyes gazing back at him. Beru had returned to his shadow form, and his deep voice brimmed with emotion. "It's been so long, my young lord," he said, his tone warm with recognition. "You've grown into such an incredible person?" The sight of Beru stirred something deep within Suho, long-forgotten memories slowly resurfaced. He recalled how, as a child, he had a fascination with ants, and among them was a black creature that had been with him during his youth. But why were these memories only returning now? Beru's words provided a clue. Beru had crossed the boundary of dimensions to find him again. Despite the reunion, Suho was still overwhelmed with questions. Why had he lived among these black creatures as a child? Why had his memories been locked away for so long? At that moment, Suho's memories became the most pressing concern. He realized he had grown stronger, yet something was still off. Beru, noticing Suho's confusion, explained that crossing dimensions demanded an immense amount of mana. When Beru first arrived, his appearance was imposing and grand, but the system had registered him as a mere common soldier. Upon learning this, Beru was enraged, displeased with the fact that his power had been diminished to such a lowly rank. The thought of being reduced to a common soldier insulted him. Suho quickly stood up, trying to reassure him. "I feel better now, was that because of you?" he asked, piecing things together. Beru confirmed this with a nod. "Yes, I healed you," he said. Suho, amazed by Beru's abilities, felt grateful, but the conversation soon shifted to something deeper. Beru revealed that Suho's true mission involved dispelling the shadow seal, a powerful restraint that had bound him. However, Beru also noted that Suho had already broken the seal on his own, perhaps unknowingly. This revelation unsettled Suho. What did the seal have to do with him, and why was Beru talking as if Suho had some greater destiny? Beru began to explain further. "Everything you've seen, everything you've lived through, it's all real. And you've grown much stronger since we last met. The great Shadow Monarch, Sung Jinwoo, sealed both your power and your memories long ago. He did this to allow you to live a normal life, free from the burdens of your lineage." Suho's mind raced, struggling to process what he was hearing. Sung Jinwoo, his father, was the one who had sealed away his powers? The realization hit him like a tidal wave. "My father? He did this?" Suho stammered, his voice barely audible. He had always assumed his father had simply left their family, abandoning them for reasons unknown. But Beru was quick to clarify. "No, your father didn't leave home. He ascended to another plane of existence, into the vast expanse of space," Beru explained, his voice filled with reverence. Suho's confusion deepened. Space? What did that mean? He couldn't comprehend what Beru was telling him. Beru continued, his tone serious. "The Shadow Army now fights a cosmic battle. Your father, Sung Jinwoo, is out there, defending our world. He's risking his life, fighting against unimaginable monsters to keep this realm safe. His opponents are powerful entities, and among them is Iterim, the absolute being seeking to conquer our world by sending its apostles to Earth." Beru explained that he had to slay countless monsters in his way to meet Suho. As Beru spoke, Suho's thoughts drifted to his mother, who had vanished years ago. "What about my mother?" Suho asked hesitantly. "She disappeared when I was still with my father." "Are they together?" Beru's expression softened. "No, your mother is not with him. Her disappearance is tied to other forces at play, but she's not with Sung Jinwoo." This only raised more questions for Suho. His father was battling for the survival of their world in space, and his mother had vanished under mysterious circumstances. The more Beru explained, the more Suho felt like his entire understanding of his life had been turned upside down. Upon hearing Suho mention his mother, Beru's anger flared. He couldn't comprehend how someone as important as Miss Hain had simply vanished. His suspicion immediately turned toward the apostles, convinced that this was a result of their trickery. There was no doubt in his mind. Suho, taking in Beru's words, asked if the Iterim were responsible, if these creatures had interfered in his parents' lives, preventing them from returning. Beru saw the deep desire in Suho's eyes, realizing just how much the young lord longed to reunite with his parents. "Of course, I want to see them," Suho responded with determination. "But it seems the only way to do that is to become stronger, to rescue my mother and meet my father." Beru, however, explained that because of the ongoing war with the Iterim, Suho's father couldn't return to Earth. If Suho wanted to save his mother, he would have to grow powerful enough to do it on his own. Beru told him there was a path forward, a key to unlocking greater strength. As they spoke, a notification window suddenly appeared before Suho, outlining a new quest, Shadow Test. The system revealed that Suho, as the son of the great Shadow Monarch, had immense innate abilities, but they were all sealed away. To regain his power, Suho would need to prove himself. His first step was to enter the Dark Dungeon, where he would be tested. The key to the Dark Dungeon would grant him access, but it could only be used in the shadow of the Sacred Protector. Beru immediately urged Suho to use the key. "You must place it in your own shadow," Beru instructed. As Suho followed the guidance, a shadow gate materialized before him. The portal inside it shimmered, waiting for him to pass through. Beru gave him one final piece of advice before Suho entered the portal. "Go inside, young master, and reclaim the powers that are yours by right." But even as Suho stood at the threshold of the portal, doubt swirled in his mind. How could all of this be real? A cosmic war, gods, Shadow Monarch, it all seemed so impossible. Yet, despite his confusion, one thing was clear: he had to gather his strength, to reunite with his family. He knew that the only way to do this was by leveling up and becoming strong enough to face the powerful enemies standing in his way. Resolute, Suho stepped forward, determined to push his limits and gain the strength necessary to protect those he loved. No matter how long it took or how difficult the path ahead might be, he would fight to save his parents and uncover the truth behind the forces that tore them apart. That's it for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. We'll see you in the next one.